Hi guys, welcome back. In the last session, we discussed all the keywords related to Dockerfile. So Dockerfile is used to create the Docker images. Dockerfile contains set of instructions. By using those instructions, we are going to create the Docker image. Docker image contains the code plus dependencies that are required to run our application. Docker image is nothing but a package. So whatever the Docker image we are creating, the Docker image we have pushed to Docker Hub. So whoever wants our Docker image, they can pull the Docker image and they can run the Docker image. When they run the Docker image, then Docker container will be created. Inside the container, our application will be executed. And so what are the keywords that we have learned in the last session? So it is from keyword. From is used to specify the base image that is required for our application, and the maintainer represents who is author of our Docker file. Copy, to copy the files from one path to another path, we are going to use copy. Add command, this is also used to copy from one path to another path. Copy will take from one path to another path, whereas add command can take from the URL also. Source can be URL. And run is used to execute the instructions while creating the Docker image. When the Docker image is getting created, here at this stage, if you want to execute some instructions, then you can go for run command. Similarly, CMD is available. CMD is used to execute the instructions at this stage while creating the container. Run is used to execute the commands while creating the image. CMD is used to execute the instructions while creating the container. CMD instructions we can override at the time of container creation, and entry point instructions we cannot override. Entry point is also used to execute the commands when the container is creating. env, environment variables. To set the environment variables in the Docker file, we can go for env. Arg. Arg is used to take the dynamic values when we are creating the container or creating the image. So instead of hard coding the values in the Docker file, we can take dynamic values as a build docs by using this arg. Next one, work dir. It is used to specify our working directory, from which location, from which directory we want to execute the files, that we can specify as work dir. And the next one, expose. Expose is used to specify on which port number our container is going to execute. On which port number our container will execute, that we can specify by using expose. Volume is used to specify storage location for the Docker container. Remember, Docker containers by default stateless. Once the container is removed, whatever the data that is available, we can't get that data back. So to make the Docker containers stateful, we will use volumes. So which container should be binded to which Docker volume, we will specify by using this volume. User. So which user you should use to create the image or to create the container, we can specify. Label is used to specify some metadata in the form of key and value. Labels also we can add in the Docker file. So with this, we understood what is Docker. Okay. So here, as of now, we covered these concepts. Now, before jumping into the real Docker implementation, so let's see, we discussed what is an application, what is application tech stack, application architecture, life without Docker, life with Docker, what is Docker, what is virtualization, what is containerization, Docker architecture, Docker setup, Docker installation we understood, Docker installation in Linux, Docker installation in the Linux. Then next one, Docker images, Docker images, Docker containers, Docker images, Docker containers, okay, Docker file keywords, Docker file keywords we understood. Then Docker image creation, we discussed Docker image creation, we discussed Docker container creation, Docker file creation, then Docker Hub, Docker registry, push image to registry. So we are able to push our Docker image to Docker registry, and we discussed Docker file keywords also. Did I cover all these concepts, guys? What is an application? What is application tech stack? What is application architecture? Life without Docker, life with Docker. What is Docker? What is virtualization? What is containerization? Docker architecture, Docker installation, Docker image creation, Docker container creation, Docker file creation, Docker registry, how to create account in the Docker Hub, how to push our image to registry, and the Docker file keywords also we understood. Okay, now let us try to implement the Docker in the projects. Let us try to implement the Docker in the projects. Fine. Now here, guys, first Dockerizing Java application. I will discuss how to Dockerize Java application, Python application also, right? Now, 2 to 3 applications I will implement in the class, and I will give 2 assignments for you. Is that okay? Is that okay for everyone? Yeah. Now, try to Docker our applications, Dockerize our application, right? Java applications Dockerization. Java applications Dockerization. How to run a Java application with the Docker? Let's try to understand. Now, guys, nowadays in the Java, we can see 2 types of applications, right? In the industry, we can see 2 types of Java applications. We can see 2 types of Java applications in the companies. First one, Java application without Spring Boot. And the second one is Java application with the Spring Boot. So earlier, people developed normal Java application. They did not use Spring Boot at that time. But today in the Java, Spring Boot is the most important concept, and every project is getting developed by using Spring Boot. So we know Java. Java is a programming language that is used to develop the applications. So Java is a programming language that is used to develop the applications. In the Java, there is a framework called Spring Boot, so which is very advanced framework, and it is rapidly used to develop Java-based applications. But still, there are some projects in the market which are legacy projects which are not using Spring Boot. And nowadays, people are using Spring Boot to develop Java applications. Guys, here, if the project is using Spring Boot, so Dockerization, Docker file will have some instructions. When the project is not using Spring Boot, then the Docker file will have some other instructions. So in the both scenarios, Docker instructions are not same. Java application without Spring Boot, Java application with the Spring Boot. So here, Spring Boot is one Java-based framework to develop Java applications quickly. So what is this Spring Boot? Spring Boot is ready-made framework to make Java applications development easy, quick, to make Java applications development simple, right? So some projects are using Spring Boot, some projects are not using Spring Boot. The projects which are not using Spring Boot, they are very legacy projects. So recent, from last 7-8 years onwards in the market, Spring Boot is having a lot of demand in the Java community. So Spring Boot applications, we are going to see how to Dockerize. And if the project does not have Spring Boot, then how to Dockerize that application. Now, normal Java applications, normal Java web applications, will be packaged as jar file and they will be deployed. They will be deployed in web server, for example, Tomcat. Okay, guys, will be deployed in the web server, for example, Tomcat. If I take a Java web application, that Java web application will be packaged as WAR file. Normal Java web applications will be packaged as WAR file and they will be deployed in the web server. For example, we are taking Apache Tomcat as a web server. Spring Boot applications will be packaged as jar file. Okay, so Spring Boot applications will be packaged as jar file and we need to run the jar file. It will take care of server internally. So what is the main difference is when we are going for normal Java application without Spring Boot, that normal Java application will be packaged as WAR file and that WAR file will be deployed in the web server. So if I have a normal Java web application, that normal Java web application will be packaged as WAR file and that WAR file will be deployed in the web server. What is the web server? We can take Apache Tomcat as a web server for that. Suppose if the project is developed by using Spring Boot applications, even if it is a web application, guys, earlier we discussed in the Maven, standalone application means jar file, web application means WAR file. But in the Spring Boot, everything will be packaged as a jar file. Spring Boot is one special ready-made framework to make Java applications development simple. Spring Boot applications will be packaged as a jar file and we need to run the jar file. That's it. So we already have seen how to run the jar file. So here, whenever you create jar file for the Spring Boot application, you just need to run the jar file. When you run the jar file, it will take care of server internally. That concept is called embedded server. That concept is called as embedded server. For normal Java applications, we need to set up the server and we need to deploy the WAR file in the server. So here, when it comes to the Spring Boot application, there is a concept called the embedded server. When you run the jar file, automatically Spring Boot will take care of the server which is required to run the application. So when we are writing the Docker file for the normal Java application, we need to specify Tomcat server and we need to specify WAR file deployment to the Tomcat server. But when you go for the Spring Boot application, you no need to specify the server. You need to package your project as a jar and you just need to run the jar. When you run the Spring Boot jar file, it will take care of the server internally. That is called as embedded server. Are you guys able to understand two types of Java applications that are available in the market? Normal Java application without Spring Boot. Normal Java application without Spring Boot. Java application with Spring Boot. Normal Java web applications will be packaged as WAR file and WAR will be deployed in the web server. For example, Tomcat. According to this, we need to write the Docker file. Suppose if you go for the Spring Boot application will be packaged as a jar and we need to run that jar file. It will take care of the server internally. That is called embedded server. Okay, guys. Are you guys clear with my point? Are you guys clear with my point? How to work with Java based applications? How many types of Java applications we can see in the market? How many types of Java applications we can see? I want everybody to respond in the chat. Please participate in the session. Please participate in the session and respond to my questions. So we can see two types of Java applications. One is normal Java application without Spring Boot. Another one is a Java application with Spring Boot. All right. Now, let me show you how to Dockerize Java web application. Docker file for Java web application. Here I'm not using Spring Boot for this project. Next project will be on the Spring Boot. So if you have normal Java application, then how we need to Dockerize that application? How we need to Dockerize that normal Java application? So to Dockerize the normal Java application, I need a Tomcat server. To run my application, my code will be available. My Maven project is available in the GitHub. To run my Maven project, I need Tomcat server. So Tomcat I want as a base image. I will specify like this from Tomcat. What is the meaning of from Tomcat? I want Tomcat as a base image. Tomcat : which version of the Tomcat you want? Some 8.0.20-JRE8. So when I specify Tomcat : this version, this will download Tomcat plus Java, which is required to run my application. That is a base image. So this Tomcat base image is going to provide Tomcat server along with Java, because Tomcat is developed by using Java. To run the Tomcat, Java is required. So when I specify from Tomcat : this, it will download Java plus Tomcat, which is required to run my application. So Tomcat server will be available. So once the Tomcat server is available, I'm going to specify copy. So my project will be available, Maven project. In the Maven project, target folder will be available, which contains application.war. Okay, guys. In the Maven, whenever we package our Maven project, compile and package our Maven project, the Maven project package file will be created inside the target folder. Maven is a build tool which is used to compile and package our application. Whenever we package our Maven application, the application war file will be created in the target directory. So I want to take the war file from the target path and I want to copy the war file to the Tomcat web apps folder. Tomcat is a web server which is used to run the web application. Where this Tomcat server will be installed? Is it going to install in our machine, or it will be installed in the Docker container? So now I am trying to Dockerize this application on the host machine. So my host machine is a Linux machine. In that host machine, I have installed the Docker. Then I am trying to create the container. So Tomcat server will be installed inside the container that we are going to create. Here the Tomcat server will be installed, not on the host machine, guys. So in the host machine, I will write the Docker file. I will create the Docker image. In the Docker image, what I'm specifying? I'm specifying from Tomcat. What is the meaning of from Tomcat? I want to Tomcat as a base image. That a Tomcat server will be installed in the Docker container. Now, once the Tomcat server is installed, I want to deploy my application to the Tomcat server. My application is a Java web application. To deploy the Java web application, we will take the war file. Who will create the war file? Maven will create the war file. Whenever we execute Maven goal, package goal, Maven will compile the project and will package the project. War file will be created because it is a web application. That war file will be available inside the target folder. Now, I need to tell to the Docker, take the war file from the target folder and deploy into Tomcat server. So whenever we install the Docker in the container, by default, the Docker will be installed in the path. So what is the default path of the Docker? The default path of the Docker will be /user/local/Tomcat/web apps. Okay, So in this location, I want to deploy my war file. In this location, I want to deploy my war file from Tomcat, including Java. It will install the Java and Tomcat in the container. By default, Tomcat will be installed into this location in the container. This is the default location for the Tomcat in the Linux machines. Copy the war file from our project target directory to the container location. So by default, this Tomcat server will run on the port number 8080. So I'm going to specify that by using expose. What is the meaning of the expose? Expose is a keyword which is used to specify. Expose is a keyword which is used to specify on which port number our container is running. So inside the container, Tomcat is running. The default port number for the Tomcat is 8080. So that I'm specifying by using expose keyword. I'm specifying that by using expose keyword. Are you guys clear? Docker file for Java web application from Tomcat, right? From is used to specify the base image. Copy, it is used to copy the files from one path to another path. Expose, it is used to specify on which port number our container is executing. Tomcat server will run by default on the 8080 port number. So Maven projects will be packaged as a war file. War file will be available in the target directory. Take the war file from the target directory and copy that to Tomcat web apps folder. Okay, from Tomcat, that means I want to use Tomcat as a base image. I want to use a Tomcat as a base image. Okay, now let me go to my GitHub account. In my GitHub account, Maven project is available. Okay, so from the GitHub, I need to download the Maven project and I want to package that Maven project and I want to Dockerize that Maven project. Okay, so here Maven web application is available. So Maven web application is available. So this Maven web application available in the GitHub. In the Maven web application, I have given the Docker file. In the project, so we will use a repository to store the project source code. Either GitHub or Bitbucket we will use as a repository. So here I created one Maven project. I have stored in the GitHub repository. I will give the URL of this repository also. Java Maven project git repo. Java Maven web application git repo. In that project, I have kept a Docker file also. That Docker file contains this information. You can see what is there in the Docker file. So the Docker file contains from Tomcat, copy the target Maven war file to the Tomcat web apps. I did not configure expose. Expose is just a documentational command. It will tell you what is the container port it is going to use. It is not mandatory to write the expose, but it is recommended to write the expose. Expose will tell on which port number your container is going to run. Tomorrow when somebody look at my Docker file, they will understand expose is used to specify the container port number. Okay, so this is my project git repository URL. Now I want to package this project and I want to Dockerize this project. I want to package this project and I want to Dockerize this project. Project code is available in the GitHub. So I want to build the Docker image in my Linux machine. Okay. So I want to clone the project into my Linux machine. In order to clone it, first let me install Git. So Git client software is required in my Linux machine. By using sudo yum install, I'm going to download Git client. Okay, sudo yum install, which is used to download Git client software in my machine. So with this, Git client is installed. Then next one, I need a Maven. Sudo yum install Maven. Sudo yum install Maven. So I want to install the Maven software also in order to build that Maven project. Okay. Git software is installed and Maven software is also installed. Git installed, and Maven is also installed. Perfect. Yeah, good guys. So for this, I have given sudo yum install git, which is used to install the Git software. Sudo yum install git. Then I have given sudo yum install Maven. So then I will go for git clone my repository URL. So this is my project repository URL. I'm using git to clone to download this repository. Code is available in the GitHub. I want to get that code. You can see currently nothing is available in my system. I'm going for git clone. It is cloning my Maven project. ls-l. You can see my Maven project is downloaded from GitHub to my Linux machine. So let me go to cd Maven web app. I'm going inside the Maven directory, ls-l. Here you can see src available, pom.xml, Maven deployment YML. This is a Kubernetes manifest file, guys. This is a Jenkins deployment file, and this is Docker file. So in the real time, whatever the files that are required for our deployment operations, those files will be available in the repository itself. Docker file is available. Okay, can we see that Docker file? By using vi Docker file, we can see that. So here, Tomcat, that base image we configured, target, my project will be packaged and it will create a war file like this in the target directory. I want to copy this war file from the target to this Tomcat web apps directory. If you want, here you can specify expose also, expose 8080. So that is the container port. Now save the file and close it. So with this, we are able to see our Maven project. With this, we are able to see the Maven project. Now let me execute mvn clean package. So what is this mvn clean package? It is used to package our Maven application. All the source code will be compiled, which is available in the project, and it is going to generate a war file. Now see, building war file. Where that war file is created? That war file is created in the project directory, Maven web app, then target. Inside the target, 01 Maven web app.war file is created. Whenever I execute Maven clean package, right? So here I have executed a command cd space my Maven project directory. So once I execute this, then I have executed a command mvn clean package. So what is this mvn clean package? It is used to compile the project and package the project. Once the project is packaged, you can see target directory will be available. ls-l space target. Inside the target directory, you can see one war file is created. In the Docker file, I'm specifying the same thing. So whatever the war file is available in the target directory, that war file should be copied into Tomcat web apps directory. Here, what is the name of the war file? 01 Maven web app.war. So I want to copy that into the Tomcat server, like this user local Tomcat web apps app.war, expose 8080. So with this, we are able to write, we are able to package our Maven project. So then I want to build a Docker image. So to build the Docker image, already Docker file is available like this. Okay. Before going to do that, Docker images. Do we have any images? Yes, there are some images available. Docker system prune-a. I'm deleting everything. Now nothing is available. Docker images are not available. Okay, now ls-l. I'm inside the project directory. Inside the project directory, Docker file is already available. In the repository itself, I kept the Docker file. What is the content in the Docker file? This is the content. From keyword I used, copy keyword I used, expose keyword I used. As we discussed, from is used to specify the base image. Copy is used to copy the files from one path to another path. Expose is used to specify container port number. Perfect. So once the project is ready, the project war file is ready in the target directory and our Docker file is also ready. So you have seen already what is the content in the Docker file. So this Docker file specifying Tomcat as a base image. Take the war file from the target directory and copy to web apps directory. Good. Now let me build the Docker image. To build the Docker image, before that I'm verifying Docker images, not available. Now I'm in the project directory. Remember, we are in the project directory and make sure Docker file is available and target directory available. How I got this? I have installed Git. I have installed Maven. I cloned my project. I changed directory to the project directory and I have done Maven clean package. So then build the Docker image. So to build the Docker image, Docker build -t Maven web application. Docker build -t Maven web application space dot. So here Maven web app is my image name. Dot I am giving to check in the current directory. So whatever the content is there in the current directory, it will take that content. It will take that content and it will take the Docker file. It will build a Docker image. Now let's execute it. It is pulling all the required information from the Docker central because I specified from Tomcat with Java. So Tomcat plus Java will be packaged in the Docker image. Our code is available in the war file. Along with that war file, we have specified Tomcat JRE. So to run my Java web application, Java software is required, Tomcat server is required. So am I installing the Java plus Tomcat? I'm telling to Docker to install Java and Tomcat. Guys, am I installing the Java and Tomcat? Am I telling to Docker to install the Java and Tomcat? I'm telling to Docker to install that. Okay, guys. Yeah. So you can use any name for the Docker image. Here, what is the name I have given for the Docker image? Maven web app. Tag is the latest. Maven web app tag I have given. So when I see earlier Docker images, no images found. But now when I see the Docker images, we can see Maven web app image is created. This is the image ID. 34 seconds ago, this Docker image got created. Are you getting my point? Once the Docker image is available, I want to run the Docker image. Okay, guys, I want to run the Docker image. When we are running the Docker image, we need to specify port mapping. We need to specify port mapping. So what is this port mapping? Now, in my machine, I created Docker image. In my machine, I created a Docker image. Now, when I run the Docker image, it is going to create a Docker container. Docker container means it is separate one virtual machine, right? One container means one machine. In that machine, our application is running. So here, instead of we are directly installing the guest operating system to install the softwares, we are using Docker to create the container. So this container is a separate virtual machine with the Docker. So earlier in the virtualization concept, people used to install the operating systems manually on the on the host operating system. They used to install the guest operating system. In the guest operating system, they used to install the softwares. But here we are not installing the guest operating system. We are not installing the softwares. We are running the Docker image. When we run the Docker image, Docker container will be created. Sir, where that container will be created? That container will be created in a separate virtual machine. Already we are using one Linux machine from the AWS cloud. In this Linux machine, when we run the Docker image, then it will create a Docker container. Docker container is a separate machine. In that machine, all the softwares are installed and our application will execute. Now, users can access the container directly or users will access our host machine directly. Guys, whenever we run our Docker image in the Docker container, end users can access the container directly. End users should access our host machine directly. End users will access the container directly. End users will access the host machine directly. Come on, man. They cannot access the container directly. They cannot access the container directly. They need to access our host machine. In the host machine, I have the Docker engine. In the host machine, I executed the Docker image with the help of Docker engine. In the host machine, Docker container created. So now, if the container is running on the port number 8080, so here, container port and host port I have to map. So there should be some mapping between the container port number and the host port number. When we are running the Docker image, so this step is important. So whenever we are running the Docker image, Docker container will be created. That a Docker container will be running in a separate virtual machine. So people should access our application from the host machine, not from the container. People should access our application from the host machine, not from the container. Because container IP will change. When I recreate my Docker container, IP address will change. But my host machine IP address is not going to change. So for the users, we don't give the container access directly. Container port number will be mapped to host port number, and we will give the access for the users to access the application from the host machine. Now I need to run the Docker image, and I need to do the port mapping between Docker container and host machine. Okay, how to do the Docker container creation with the port mapping? All right, already we have the Docker image. Now let us try to run this image. Let us try to run this image and do the port mapping. Now here, Docker run. What is the image name? Maven web app is the image name. Docker run image name. If I directly run like this, we cannot access the application because the application will be running inside the container. But we know the machine IP. This is the host machine IP address. My Docker VM, this is the public IP of my host machine. But where is that application will run? When I execute like this, my application will run inside the container. Before executing this, I need to do -p 8080:8080. 8080:8080. This is host port number. This is container port number. So container will run on 8080 because it is a Tomcat server. Tomcat server will be running on the port number 8080. That same port number I want to map to host machine. You can map the different port number also, no problem. So you can change 9090:8080. If I give 9090:8080, what is the meaning of that? Container port number is 8080, host port number is 9090. Our application is running on the container with 8080. That 8080 is mapped to 9090 on the Docker host machine. Okay. Now, if I want to use the same thing, that is also fine. 8080:8080. So the first 8080 represents a host port number. The second 8080 represents a container port number. Docker run -p 8080:8080. -p represents port mapping. -p represents port mapping. Space, our image name. What is the image name? That is Maven web app. Observe carefully. I created a Docker image with a name called Maven web app. So that image contains code plus Java plus Tomcat. So my application is a Java web application. So I copied the WAR file to the Docker image and I specified from Tomcat JRE. Java will be installed, Tomcat will be installed. My project WAR file is copied to the Tomcat server. Now I am running this. When I'm running my application by using Docker image, it will create a Docker container. Docker container, nothing but a separate virtual machine. I need to do the port mapping between the host machine and the container. For that, I'm using -p. Now run this. Docker run -p. Now you can see my application is running in the Tomcat server. It is giving the message also deployment of our web application got completed. So this is here deploying web application archive user local Tomcat web apps maven web app.war. So our war file name we copied into the Tomcat web apps with the maven web app.war. It started our Tomcat server Apache Tomcat 8.0 because in the Docker file I specified from as Tomcat 8.0. It has started the Tomcat server. Tomcat server is based on the Java. To run the Tomcat, Java is required. So it installed Java and it installed Tomcat. It copied my war file to the Tomcat server and it started the Tomcat server. The Tomcat server will be running on the port number 8080. Okay, guys. Now my application is running in the Tomcat server with the 8080. That 8080 port is mapped to our host port. Now in the host port, to access the application, go for the security group. What is the security group we have attached to this machine? Check the inbound rules of the security group. So here, select the Docker machine and check what is the security group we have attached for that. In that security group, inbound rules will be available. By default, in the AWS, the machines are secured with the firewalls. Now my application is running on the 8080. I need to tell to AWS, hey AWS, any request comes with 8080 port number for this Docker machine, you allow that request. So how to specify to allow that request? By using security group attached to the Linux machine. So select the Docker machine and go to security. Here security group is available. Click on that security group. Then inbound rules are available. Currently only SSH protocol is enabled, 22. As the SSH protocol is enabled for the Docker machine, we are able to connect to the Docker by using mobile extram or putty. Now I want to allow 8080 protocol requests also. Add the rule custom TCP, specify the port number as 8080 anywhere. Any request which comes with 8080 port number for this machine, allow that request. So that is the meaning of this inbound rule custom TCP with 8080. Click on save the rule. Now I have modified security group of my Docker machine. I enabled 8080 port number. Now my Docker machine is available. Go to the details. You can see public IP is available. Take this public IP. It is mapped to host port number 8080. So public IP colon 8080 /maven web -app. Let's access it. Now, my Maven web application, I'm able to access in the Windows browser. Actually, where that application is running? That application is running in the Docker container. Where is that Docker container? Docker container is created in the Linux machine. Now, if I give this URL, anybody can access my application. If I give this URL, anybody can access my application. Are you guys able to access my URL now? Can you check that? Are you guys able to access my URL? Can you check that? Are we able to Dockerize? Are we able to access my application now? Yes. Am I installing all the required softwares to run my Maven Java web application? I'm just creating a Docker file, creating the image and running the image. Am I installing Java? Am I installing Tomcat to run my application? Am I installing Java? Am I installing Tomcat to run my application? No. No. Now here, guys, there is one problem. Here there is one problem. The problem is I have executed my container by using this command. I have executed this container by using this command. Then it is printing server log file. Server logs it is printing. The server log trace is printing. In this window, can I execute any other command? Is my terminal open for command execution now? or my command is not open for the command execution now? In the terminal, can I execute any other command now? No, I cannot execute. So that's why when we are creating the Docker containers, we need to create the containers in the detached mode. We need to create the containers in the detached mode. So this, whenever I execute this command, Tomcat server started, my application is deployed, my terminal is not open for the commands execution. Let me stop it. Now when I do Control C, the Tomcat server got stopped. I mean to say my container got stopped. My container got stopped. How to execute that Docker container in the detached mode? So detached mode means here we are going to specify -d. So when I execute this in the -d, now see, it created the container and it opened the terminal to execute the next commands. Now I can see Docker PS. When I see Docker, I'm able to execute the next command. Earlier, I have not given -d. When I did not give -d, server logs are printed and I'm not able to execute the next command. What I want to do is, I want to run the Docker container, then I want to execute the other commands also. Now you can see my Docker PS. When I execute the Docker PS, it is showing me the running containers. So this is the container which is in the running status. This is a container created by using this Java Maven web app image name. 8 seconds ago, this container is created. In this container, port number 8080 is mapped to host port number 8080. Port mapping also it is doing. Container running on the port number 8080, it is mapped to host port 8080. So now we can access our application on the host port 8080 by enabling that in the security group. Do you understand what is -d, what is -p here? All of you able to understand what is -d and what is -p here? Come on, guys. What is -d and what is -p? Are you able to understand that? -p is used for port mapping. -d is used for a detached mode. Okay. So now I have installed Git. I have installed Maven. I cloned Git repository and I have done directory change. Then Maven clean package. After the Maven clean package, I build a Docker image. Docker build -t image name Maven web app space dot. With this Docker image is created, I'm able to see the Docker images here. Then I want to run the Docker image. For that, Docker run -d -p 8080:8080. Then I will specify whatever the image name that we have given. So these are the commands that we need to execute, guys. In the Linux machine for practicing today's application, first connect to Linux machine, connect to Docker machine, then start the Docker. How to start the Docker? Sudo service docker start. So whenever you use sudo service docker start, then the Docker VM, Docker software will be started. Then install the Git client, install the Maven, then clone the Git repository. Then this project will be cloned into your Linux machine. Then go inside that project directory by using cd. Then execute Maven clean package. Once the Maven clean package is executed, war file will be generated in the target directory. So you can see that war file also by using ls-l space target. So when you execute this command, it will display the war which is created in the target directory. The war should be available. And then Docker file will be available. Docker build -t image name space dot. With this Docker image will be created. We can verify the Docker images which are created. Once you are able to see the Docker image, you need to run this command. I'm giving -d -p. -d to run the container in the detached mode, -p to perform the port mapping, and this is the image name. This is the image name. Once you have run this image, then you can execute Docker PS command. Docker PS command is used to display the containers which are in the running status. Then go to enable enable 8080 port in Docker machine attached security group, which is attached to the enable 8080 port in security group inbound rules. Inbound rules, custom TCP with the 8080 port number. So that is what I have shown you here. Go to your machine, select security. You can see security group, which we have associated with this machine. Click on this security group, go to inbound rules, click on inbound rules. You need to select this. Type you need to specify as type you need to specify as custom TCP. Type you can specify as custom TCP. Okay, custom TCP. Port range you need to specify as 8080. Port range specify as 8080. And the source you need to specify. You need to specify the source anywhere IPv4. Source you will specify anywhere IPv4. Then it will allow all the requests. Source anywhere IPv4. Then once we have done this process, access our application in browser. So what is the URL to access your application? http://ec2 VM public IP ec2 VM public IP : 8080/maven-web-app. So this is the URL which I have given to you. So with this URL we can access our application. With this URL we can access our application. So you know how to get the public IP of your machine, right? So if you go to the instances which are running Docker VM, for the Docker VM details, public IP is available. You need to keep that EC2 VM public IP : container port 8080. It is mapped to host port 8080. So you need to specify the host port, Maven web app. Here, Maven web app is the context path. So whatever the WAR file is copied to the Tomcat server, whatever the WAR file we mentioned in the Docker file, what is the WAR file name we mentioned in the Docker file? I mentioned Maven web app.war. So our project context path will be available as a Maven web app. So that is what we are keeping in the URL. So if I give that context path as a Maven web app, then our application is accessible. Our application is accessible. So can you guys do this process, guys? I have given everything step by step, how to Dockerize our Java web application by using Docker file. So this is the procedure that you need to follow. Docker file for Java web application. So project Git repository also I have given. So this is the procedure that you need to follow. Working procedure. To practice, first connect to your Docker machine, start the Docker, install the Git, install the Maven, clone the Git repository, then cd Maven web app, mvn clean package, ls-l, Docker build-t, Docker images available, and Docker container creation, checking the containers created, enable 8080 port number in the security group inbound rules, which is attached to Docker machine. You need to specify type as custom TCP, port as 8080, source. Any request which is coming from with 8080 port I want to allow. Once this security group is enabled, you need to type this URL in the browser. Here Maven web app is the context path that we specified as a var in the Tomcat server. Whatever the var name will be there in the Tomcat, with that var name, our application will be deployed. Okay. Are you clear, guys? Now here, first I am installing the Git and Maven, then I am cloning and I am packaging. Sir, I want to clone, I want to package everything I want to do in the Docker file. That also we can do it. I will show you that process as well. In the real time, we are not going to do all this process manually. In the real time, we will automate this process by using Jenkins. Whatever the working procedure I have done here, this is a manual process to deploy the application using Docker. Tomorrow, Jenkins will do all this activity for us. Taking the code from the repository, packaging the code, creating the Docker image, and running the Docker container. All this work will be automated in the coming classes by using Jenkins. Are you getting my point, Pravalika? So this process is a manual process. In the industry, manual process will not be available. This process will be automated by using Jenkins. But to understand the Jenkins integration, first we should know how manually we are going to use the Docker. Then these steps will be automated by using Jenkins. All of you clear with my point? All of you clear with my point? So Java, Maven web application, normal Java application without Spring Boot, Java application with Spring Boot. Spring Boot is ready-made framework to make Java application development simple. Normal Java applications will be packaged as a jar file and war file, and that war file will be deployed in the Tomcat server. Spring Boot application will be packaged as a jar file, and we need to run the jar file. It will take care of server internally. So for Spring Boot application, this Docker file will not work. This Docker file will work only for the normal Java applications without Spring Boot. So this is the working procedure for the Dockerizing normal Java web application. All of you clear with this process, guys? All of you clear with this process? Right? Now, for example, if I go for Spring Boot application, how Spring Boot applications will be packaged? Spring Boot application will be packaged as a war file, or Spring Boot application will be packaged as a jar file. Spring Boot application will be packaged as a jar file. Do I need a Tomcat server for the Spring Boot application, or I don't need the Tomcat server for the Spring Boot application? Do I need a Tomcat server for the Spring Boot application? I don't need a Tomcat server for the Spring Boot application. I don't need Tomcat server for the Spring Boot application. Okay. Can we write the Docker file for the Spring Boot application? Can we write the Docker file for the Spring Boot application? Come on. Right. Dockerizing Spring Boot application. Dockerizing Spring Boot application. As I told you, Spring Boot is a special framework in the Java which is used to develop the Java applications easily. So Spring Boot applications will be packaged as a jar file, and we will run the jar file. When we run the jar file, it will start the embedded Tomcat server. You no need to specify Tomcat for the Spring Boot. Spring Boot will take care of the Tomcat. You just need to package the jar file and you need to run the jar file. That's it. Now, for the Spring Boot applications, the Docker image should be created, right? So here, for that, I am writing a Docker file. From OpenJDK :11. So I'm just specifying that I want Java 11 version to run my Spring Boot application. Earlier, what I specified? Earlier, I specified a Tomcat, because for the normal Java web application, Tomcat server is required. For the Spring Boot application, Tomcat is not required directly. So that's why I'm specifying my base image as OpenJDK, from OpenJDK. So when I specify from OpenJDK 11, so it will download the Java software in the Docker container. Now, copy the project jar file from the target directory. In the target directory, jar file will be available. That jar file directly I will copy to that Linux machine user app. That's it. So this is my host machine path. In my project target directory will be available In the target directory, app.jar file will be available. Whatever the name, file name will be available. Target/app.jar. So I'm telling to copy the jar file from my machine to container machine. User app is a Linux path in the container. So you can specify that app.jar. Whatever the jar is available here, copy that jar file to this location. Now, this is my host machine path and this is container path. I'm telling from OpenJDK 11, I want Java 11 version. Then copy the jar file. Spring Boot application will be packaged as a jar file. Take this jar file and copy that jar to this location. After copying the jar to that location, I need to change my working directory to this location and execute the jar file. How to change the working directory? By using workdir/user/app. So I am copying the jar from my target machine to the container machine. In the container, I should go to this directory because in that directory my jar is available. So to change the directory, we will use the work directory. Once I change it to work directory, now I want to execute my jar file. So to execute the jar file, I'm going for entry point. So here I will give 3 options for the entry point. So first one is I want to execute the jar file by using java-jar, that jar file name. And here I'm going to specify expose 8080. So this Spring Boot application will use the Tomcat server. That Tomcat server will run on the port number 8080. So from OpenJDK:11, I'm specifying the base image as a Java, then copy the jar file from the target directory to user app directory. File name you can give anything. Once the file is copied to this location, then change the work directory to that location where the jar is available. Then go to entry point and execute the jar file by using Java command. So when I execute the jar file, it will start my Spring Boot application. So this is Docker file for the Spring Boot application. Okay. So for the Spring Boot application, I have given one Git repository, guys. So let me go to my github.com. In my github.com, I have given a project Spring Boot Docker. Spring Boot Docker application is available. So this application is created by using Spring Boot. In this application also I have given Docker file. So if you open this Docker file, you can see same thing. From OpenJDK:11, copying the jar file from this is the jar file which will be created in the target directory. Copy the jar from this target directory to user app directory. Then change the work directory to user app. If you don't specify any name after the user app, this file will be copied to that location. If you want to change the name also, you can give the name here. It will be changed. Then I'm changing to working directory. Then I'm executing entry point. I'm not configuring the expose, but recommended to configure the expose. When I configure the expose, what will happen? People will understand what is the port number it is using by our container. Are you clear with this Docker file? Are you guys clear with the Docker file which is used to Dockerize our Spring Boot application? Are you clear with the Docker file which is used to Dockerize our Spring Boot application? From copy, workdir, expose, entry point. These are the DSL keywords, domain specific language keywords, which are used to write our Docker files. Okay, now let me take my Spring Boot Docker application from GitHub, copy this. So this is the URL, Dockerizing Spring Boot application. So here I'm giving Git repository. Here I'm giving Spring Boot app Git repo. Spring Boot application Git repository. For Spring Boot application will be packaged as a jar. Spring Boot app will be packaged as jar file, even though it is web application. Even if it is web application. Even if it is web app. For Spring Boot application, packaging format is jar. Spring Boot will have embedded Tomcat server. Spring Boot will have embedded Tomcat server to run. We no need to deploy the Spring Boot application manually. We just need to run the Spring Boot jar file. We no need to run Spring Boot. We no need to deploy basically. We no need to deploy Spring Boot app in server manually. We no need to deploy Spring Boot app in server manually. We just need to run the jar. We just need to run Spring Boot application jar file. It will take care of server and deployment. Okay, that is the beauty. So this is the Docker file for that. Spring Boot app Docker file. Spring Boot application Docker file. Right. So once this Spring Boot application Docker file is available, then what we need to do? We just need to build. We need to download the project and we need to build that project, create the image and execute the image. Now here my Docker container is running on the port number 8080. So here Spring Boot, here Java web application running on 8080, that is mapped to host port 8080. Now let me clone my Spring Boot project now. ls-l. Here we are having Maven web application. Now I want to clone my Spring Boot application. So this is the Git repository for the Spring Boot application. Okay, let me go for cloning. Here I'm in the home directory, right? Git clone. I need to do that. Git clone. So with this Spring Boot Docker application, I have cloned. Spring Boot Docker application, I have cloned. ls-l. Maven web application is available. Spring Boot Docker application is also available. cd space Spring Boot Docker app. ls-l. Now here we have src, pom.xml and a Docker file is available. So cat Docker file. So in the Docker file from JDK target, when the project is packaged, this jar will be created and this is the container path. I'm going to that container path by using work directory. Then I'm executing the jar file, which is copied to the container path by using entry point. So that's it. So now let me see the Docker images. Maven web app image is available. Now let me build the Docker image ls-l. To build the Docker image, first project should be packaged. We need the jar file to the target directory. Currently target directory not available. mvn clean package. mvn clean package. I'm trying to package this project by using Maven. By using clean package goal, I'm trying to package this project. When the project is packaged, it has to create the jar file. The project build success. When the project build is a success, you can see ls-l. Earlier target directory not available in the project. Now target directory is created. ls-l target. ls-l target. Now can you see Spring Boot Docker app.jar is created in the target directory? So I have cloned my project, then I have packaged my project, then the jar file is created. So once the jar is created for my application, I can copy the jar by executing this Docker file. Okay, Docker file is also available. Project is a package. So what are the steps that I have done, guys? Procedure, working procedure, what I have done? I have cloned that project. Okay, so how I have cloned that project? Git clone repository URL. Git clone repository URL. I have given the repository URL here. We need to make sure we are doing the cloning from outside of the Maven project. Okay, we should come out from the Maven project directory by using cd. Then git clone. After doing the git clone, then cd space this project directory. We should go to this project directory. After going to this project directory, you can see ls-l. Target folder will not be available. Then we need to execute mvn clean package. Then you can see target directory will be created. How to see the content of the target directory? ls-l target. Whenever you execute ls-l target, you should be able to see the jar file of our Spring Boot application. You should be able to see the jar file of the Spring Boot application. Once the jar file is created for the Spring Boot, you can see the Docker file available. Build a Docker image. Docker build -t Spring Boot application space dot. I'm giving the image name as SB app. You can give anything as an image name. Docker build -t SB app space dot. Run this. So with this, it is downloading OpenJDK 11 and it is building my Docker image. It is building my Docker image. So we can see the Docker images which are created. How to see the Docker images which are created? By using Docker images command. Still the image creation is in progress. Yeah, successfully image is created with a name called SB app. This is the entry point. Now clear? ls-l. Now here Docker files are available. Docker images. Now you see, now my OpenJDK 11 is downloaded one image. SB app image is created just now. 14 seconds ago, my SB app image is created. Now I want to run this SB application. I want to run this SB application. So now I want to run means I need to run in the detached mode and I need to do the port mapping. Already 8080 port is mapped to Tomcat web application. Now I can't use the same port number here. I need to map container port to host port. In the host port, already one application is running. Now let's go for Docker run -d -p 9090:8080. So what is -d? Detached mode. What is -p? Port mapping. 9090 is the host port number. 8080 is the container port number. Why I am not using 8080? Already one application running with the 8080 port number in the host machine. Every application should be mapped to a different port number. So 9090 is the host port. 8080 is the container port. Space. What is the image name? SB app is the image name. Now you see my Spring Boot application is executing in the Docker container. Let us see the containers here. Docker PS. Now you see when I use the Docker PS, Maven web application. Docker PS command is used to display all the containers which are in the running mode. When I execute the Docker PS, so here Maven web application started in the container. So this container created for Maven web application 26 minutes ago, right? So this is mapped to 8080 port number on the host machine. Now SB application, Spring Boot application container created 8 seconds ago. That is mapped to 9090 port number in the host machine. Now earlier, we enabled 8080 port in the security group. That is for the normal Java web application. Now I need to enable 9090 port also. Go to the security group. Go to the inbound rules. Custom TCP, add the rule. Now I will specify 9090 for the Spring Boot. Anywhere IPv4, click on the save rules. Now I have added. Go to this dashboard, instances running. Okay, Docker VM is available. Docker VM, take the public IP. I'm taking the public IP. So go to this public IP colon 9090. Public IP colon 9090. Am I able to access? Welcome to Ashok IT. So for the Spring Boot application, context path is not required. So here, public IP colon 9090. I'm able to send a request to my Spring Boot application. If I go for 8080 colon Maven web app, it will access normal web application. So now I'm running two Docker containers on the same machine. I'm running two Docker containers on the same machine. This is first application URL and this is second application URL. So when we are running two containers in the same machine, host port should be different for both machines. We can't use the same host port for both machines. So one machine, one container is running with the Spring Boot application. Another container is running with the Java web application. So in one machine, I'm running two Docker containers. These two Docker containers are mapped to two different host ports. So 8080 host port is mapped to Maven web application. 1990 host port is mapped to Spring Boot application. Are you guys able to access my both URLs? Are you guys able to access my both URLs? Yeah. So what is the working procedure I have done for this? I have cloned the Git repository which contains the Docker application, Spring Boot application with Docker. So navigated to the project directory. Check the files available in the project. Do the Maven clean package. Check the target directory files. See the Docker images which are available. Okay, then build the Docker image. Docker build -t. Docker build -t image name. Spring Boot app space dot. After executing, then again you can see Docker images. Then we need to run the Docker image. Docker run -d -p 1990:8080 space image name SB app. Then you can see Docker PS. Now enable 9090 port in security group of Docker machine. Then access the application in the browser. Access the application in browser. How to access this application in the browser? What is the URL? http:// public IP :9090. That's it. There is no context path. Application name no need to specify in the URL for the Spring Boot. So 9090 we are specifying as a port number because we are mapping that to the 9090. No need to be mapping to 9090. You can give 7070 or 8081. Suppose if you are not running the Maven web application, then here you can map it to 8080. So if you are running multiple containers, map them to unique port numbers. You have to map them to unique port numbers. This is the working procedure for the Spring Boot application Dockerization. And this is the working procedure for Java web application. Working procedure for Java web application. Working procedure for Spring Boot application. So Docker files are same for the both applications. Docker files are different for both applications. Docker files are same for both applications. Docker files are different for both applications. Docker files are different for the both applications. Let me upload this material, guys. So today's session is very important. Let me update the Docker nodes, latest nodes, today's nodes. I want everybody to practice these two applications that we have done. I want everybody to practice these two applications that we have done. Normal Java application Dockerization and Spring Boot application Dockerization. For DevOps people, I have uploaded, and for Docker people, I am uploading now. Could you please check it, guys? The latest notes is available. Could you please check it and confirm? Is the latest notes updated? Could you please check it and confirm? Is the latest notes updated? Yeah. Good. Anybody having any questions? You can unmute and you can ask me now.
Sir, that last part of port mapping, you did some security changes on AWS, right, sir? Can you just show that?
You need to go to your machine, the Docker machine, select security. Here inbound rules available. Na? You can click on the link of the security group, then go to inbound rules, edit the inbound rules. You can take a screenshot. It should be displayed like this.
What are we trying to achieve here, sir? That mapping of the port, we are informing the AWS?
We are informing the AWS to allow the request which is coming from this port number. AWS will secure our machines by using firewalls. We are enabling that firewall rule to allow the traffic.
Okay.
In the AWS classes, you will understand what is the security group and all that stuff. Currently, remember that By default, AWS will not allow the request to our machines which are running in the AWS. To allow the request, we need to inform to AWS by using security groups. That is inbound rule. That means incoming traffic we are telling to allow. If request is coming with 8080, it should allow. If request coming with 9090, it should allow. If request coming with SSH22, it should allow. SSH22 is used to connect to the machine from the putty or WinSCP.
Okay. So, sir, in the Spring Boot, it was using 8080 in your default file, but here you are using 9090, right?
Yes, sir. Spring Boot container is running on the 8080 only. Only host port is 9090. Still Spring Boot is container running on the 8080 only. Container port I mapped to host port, right? Here if you see, this is the container port number. In my machine, already 8080 used by Java web application. That's why I am mapping the Spring Boot host port to 9090. So that two applications are running in the two containers on the same machine.
Okay, so the host port number we have to mention there, whatever host you use.
Yes, whatever you want to use, you need to mention here. Okay. The Spring Boot application will use the Tomcat as embedded server. The Tomcat embedded server port number will be 8080 only.
Okay.
Sir, we have used that. That means that multiple containers can run on the same port number.
Multiple containers can run on the same port number. Yes. Why? Because every container is independent, right? Here, this container is running and this container is running. This container will run in one virtual machine. This container will run in one virtual machine. There is no dependency. So two containers can run on the same port number. In our scenario, Maven web application running on the Tomcat with 8080. That is in one container. Spring Boot application also running in the Tomcat with the same port number 8080. So this is one container, this is one container. These two containers is nothing but two virtual machines. Multiple containers can run on the same port number. But when we are mapping these containers to the host machine, the host port number should be different for the both machines. Here we are mapping like this, right? One port number, 8080 we map it to Maven host port, Maven project host port. 9090 we map it to Spring Boot host port.
Sir, you can add this point in notes also.
We can't map same host port number to two container, right?
No. Every process should have unique port number. You can't use same host port for both containers mapping. So that's why for the first application I used 8080. For second application I used 9090.
So can we use any port number like 90?
You can give any port, you can give 9091, 9092.
Or can we go 1, 2, 3, 4, anything like?
Yes, you can give like that also, no problem.
Any available.
Any available port number you need to map.
Sir, if we accidentally map same port, will it overwrite?
It will not overwrite, it will fail. Whenever you are trying to create a container by using the same port number which you already used at the host level, it will fail.
Do we have any command to check which port is free, sir, instead of avoiding the failure?
Yes, that is, you need to check the processes available in the Linux machine, basically.
ps-ef grep and
yes,
check
right.
the port.
Yep.
Sir, we have used to the OpenJDK 11. Is it possible to open JDK 8?
You can specify which version of JDK you want.
What if
basic question?
Here I have given OpenJDK 11. Now you can give OpenJDK 17 also. Right.
Sir, what if our Spring Boot
application
database dependency?
If our Spring Boot application
has database dependency, database is required for the Spring Boot application.
Yeah, in the Docker Compose, I will explain how to database will run in one container. Spring Boot application will run in one container. We will establish connection between Spring Boot and database by using Docker Compose.
Okay.
Yeah,
one question.
Container-based applications we are going to learn.
Ashok, I have a question. So we are downloading Maven and Git here, right? Yeah,
Yes.
we are installing. So
Right.
whereas Tomcat is getting installed in the Docker itself.
In the Docker container itself, it is installed. Maven Git will install in the host machine to download the code and to package the code.
So
Okay.
can't Docker
Yes, you can do it.
install it
We can-
directly?
I told already that we can do it. I will explain that process also.
Okay. Another question is like how to delete an image.
RMI command I have given already. Docker RMI space image name.
So will that remove it from the Docker repository also?
No. It is from only your system.
Okay, how to delete in the repositories?
Manually, you need to go there and you need to delete it.
I'm unable to find the option there. So
You can find. So I will show you in the Docker Hub. If you
okay.
click on that image name, there will be a setting option. From there, you can delete it.
Okay.
Ashok, this is Nagarjuna.
Hi,
Does
sir.
this
Yeah.
Ashok, I'm having one doubt. Like we are installing Tomcat in Linux, Amazon Linux, but we are accessing it in our Windows browser. How is it possible without changing the configuration?
Public IP we are using, right? That is what the port mapping we have done. So the Docker container is running in the Linux machine. That Linux machine public IP is available. Using public IP and host port we can access. When I access this host port 9090, 9090 is already mapped to 8080 port, which is used by the container. So here the mapping is happening between the container to the Linux machine. That Linux machine public IP we are using to access from outside of the Linux. Got it?
Ashok, so can you tell? I see I'm actually listed for this Docker Kubernetes course. I see that course when I log in, but where do I find these notes that you upload? Please help me.
When you log in into our application, that is ashokitech.com, you can see my courses option. There Docker Kubernetes will be available. There Zoom link will be available to join the class. View notes option will be available. When you click it, you can see. Can you share your screen? I will guide you. What is your name?
Yes, sir. My name is Sanju.
Yeah, Sanju. Can you share your screen?
I will. Yeah, I'm sharing it.
Yeah.
Here it is.
Not this one, sir. Go back. Not this one. Go join in our website. Log in into our website. There is another website, ashokitech.com. You can just type Ashokite in the Google.
Yeah.
Yeah, log in. Sign in with Google Plus. If you know credentials, you can log in. Yeah.
Oh.
Yes, you have the Dockers and Kubernetes, right? Click on View Notes.
Okay, got it.
You have the download option. Click on the Docker Notes download option.
You.
You need to join the class from here.
I
join
got it.
live class. Yeah.
Ashok, this is Nagarjuna.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
See,
Thank
when
you so
we
much.
created the Docker image, Docker build.-t.m I'll be plotting. We'll be getting the permission denied error. So now I'm going to share my screen. Could you please help us with this one?
Yeah. Can you please share it?
See, actually here I have. See, this is the file I have created. So I have click on the escape and the colon WQ.
Yes, right.
So, but here I came to here and I can execute the Docker build.
Can you please execute Docker info command? Yeah, it is not getting. Execute sudo Docker info.
Yeah.
This is the problem. So for your EC2 user, there is no permission for the Docker group. You need to execute everything with the sudo permission. So whenever you are building the Docker image, execute sudo Docker build. Your image name you can give. Dot.
Yeah, okay, no problem. Okay,
yes.
That is sudo issue, permission issue, correct?
Right. So you did not do the Docker, you did not add that EC2 user to the Docker group. In the notes I have given the command to add the EC2 user to the Docker group. You missed that command.
I didn't miss it this one. Actually, every day I'll be practicing here.
Yeah. You now every Docker command you need to execute with the sudo permission.
Hi, Ashok.
Yes, sir.
So can we access our application inside the Linux, what we have created?
Because it is a CLI based, right? You can't access, you can just do the curl. You can just send a request to that. You can see the response, but there is no browser in that. It is just a CLI based machine. There is no browser in that machine.
Okay.
Hi, Ashok. This is Sandeep. Actually,
Hi, Sandeep.
Yesterday I tried to push the image to Docker Hub, but I'm getting error. Requested access to resource is denied.
Sir, here, whenever I am pushing I'm tagging the image, in the image tag, I will prefix the image with my username. You need to do that.
Actually, I tried, but not sure.
That's fine. Yeah, we will check that issue. No problem. We are not able to push now. So don't push the image to the Docker Hub. Just create the image and run in your machine. Pushing, I will check that issue in the next session.
Okay.
Ashok.
Yes, sir.
See, while we using the Docker command at the group, actually I'm using the sudo user mode -az docker ec2 user I'm doing.
Yes, right.
So I did, but Docker info I'll be trying, will be get the same permission error like that.
After executing that command, you need to exit from the terminal and you need to reconnect to that.
So again, we'll be reconnect or restart the services, Docker services.
No need to restart the service. Just exit and connect it again. Just close the terminal and connect it.
Yeah, okay, no problem. I'll be doing it. Okay.
Yep.
Yeah, thank
Hello,
you.
sir.
Hi.
So, sir, what is the significance of user app directory? Why we are using in every target folder user app?
That is the path, the default path in the Linux machine where we are copying our files. That is the container path. Basically,
okay,
you can say Linux path. Yeah.
Okay, that is the container path for every container.
Every container is a Linux machine only, man. Docker container means it is a one virtual Linux machine. They will spin up on the fly. In that root path will be available /user/app. In that we are keeping our files and we are running our projects from there.
Okay, sir. Thank you.
Hello, sir.
Hello.
Sir, in case you have created the project is created with the help of Spring Initializer, and in that project there is a Docker file is not available, and how to create the Docker file?
You need to create the Docker file. That is what we discussed, right? You need to open vi Docker file and you write the content. First I have written the Docker file, then only I have closed that project, right? I have given the commands how to write the Docker file.
Okay.
Yeah.
Sir, hi.
Fine, guys. Fine, good. Yeah, Praveen, please post your question in the WhatsApp group, man. I have a class at 9:30. I should go to the institute now. So the remaining people who have questions, please post in the WhatsApp group and please practice these things. And we have our next class tomorrow. Okay. So tomorrow we are going to understand how to Dockerize our Python application as well as the remaining applications also. So tomorrow, I know that Ugadi festival, but our class will be completed by 8:30. Okay. Fine, guys. Thank you. Tomorrow we have the next class. We'll meet in the tomorrow session. Thank you.